Good morning. It's good to be with you today, whether you are here in the sanctuary or you're watching from at home. It's good for all of us to be together. As we prepare for worship this morning for our service exploring next month's SoulMatters theme of interdependence, I offer these words by the Reverend Gretchen Haley. May they help ground us and center our minds and our hearts for worship. We are keepers of hope, holders of memory, storytellers and song weavers, pulling on this thread of truth, this other march of history that might otherwise fail to find its footing. That life is filled with kindness, bold beauty, courageous compassion, sacrifice for the common good, and a wide willingness to embrace neighbors and strangers as kin. We are here to do the work of hope, remembering the past and remembering ourselves, imagining our most possible future for this life that teeters too often on the edge of forgetting. We belong to each other. Bring all you are, every shadow and every light, every hope and every fear, for this radiant hour. Come, let us hope with each other. Come and let us worship together.
The flaming chalice is the symbol of the Unitarian Universalist tradition, the liberal religious tradition to which this congregation belongs. Will those of you here in person please stand in body or spirit for our chalice lighting? If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to light it with me at this time. Please join me in reciting the words on the screen. As we kindle this flame, we recommit ourselves to nurturing the spirits of one another and the common good of the world we share. May the light of this flame be welcoming to all who seek a liberal religious home. For those of you already standing, I invite you to remain standing for our opening hymn. Our opening hymn is 1051, We Are. Good morning. I am Karen Jones. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a member of our worship team this morning. Whether you're a first-time visitor or a long-time member, I'd like to offer you a special welcome. Here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Raleigh, we are intentionally inclusive, liberally religious, and actively serving the common good of our shared world. Whoever you are, and wherever you are on your own religious journey, you are welcome here. If you're visiting us for the first time in person, I invite you to stop by our welcome stand in the foyer if you have not already done so. Fill out a visitor form, get a name tag, and pick up one of our pamphlets to find out more about UUFR and Unitarian Universalism. If you're visiting us online, I invite you to fill out our visitor form at www.uufr.org/visitor form. If you do this, you'll start receiving our weekly e-newsletter. This morning, Will Smith, one of our lay ministers, will be available in the front right corner of the sanctuary after service to talk with anyone who might be experiencing difficult circumstances in their lives and would like to talk to someone. All of you who are members or pledging friends of this congregation should have received pledge forms in the mail this week for our upcoming fiscal year. If you did not, please contact Louis Kopalski, our operations director. Please do your best to return those by March 31st at the latest. It is also possible to complete your pledge online. Please see the box on the front page of our website. At this time, we've received 60 pledges for the upcoming fiscal year from our generous members and friends. Thank you to those of you who've already turned in your pledge forms. I hope all of you will read through the chalice you received by mail on Thursday about everything happening here at UUFR. Today, I'd like to highlight two things. UUFR and our consultant, Dr. Quentin Nichols, are working together on a project to understand and provide recommendations for attracting and retaining members of BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, and communities of color. The next in-person session is next Sunday at UUFR. All are invited regardless of your race or ethnic background. If you've contributed before, your ongoing insights remain incredibly valuable. Thank you for helping advance this important conversation on diversity and inclusion. We are also looking for members to serve on a new exciting board task force. This task force will help our congregation learn and give input on an expanded statement of UU principles. The UU principles are part of the bylaws of the Unitarian Universalist Association, the association of congregations we are a member of, and they are updated periodically. Now, after many years of discussion, all UU congregations have before us a final proposal for a new statement on our faith's modern principles, purposes, and sources to be voted on by UU congregations in June. Our new board task force here at UUFR will help us participate in this historic process. It is a short-term commitment through July 2024 with periodic meetings and listening sessions. If you're interested in serving on this task force or learning more about other activities at UUFR, please visit your Chalice newsletter for details. Finally, our in-person social hour this morning is downstairs after service in Founders Hall. I now invite you to meet and greet your neighbors.
There will be plenty of time to continue those conversations during social hour. This is the time in our service when we acknowledge some of the joys and the sorrows of our community. We do this because we believe that a joy shared is a joy made greater, and a sorrow shared is made easier to bear. Anyone is invited to email a joy or sorrow to joysandsorrows@uufr.org before 9 a.m. on Sunday, and anyone is also invited to light a candle and fill out a card if you wish that your joy or sorrow can be shared with the congregation. This morning we share the sorrow of the passing of Rabbi Rachel Jurovich, who died unexpectedly on Saturday, March 2nd. Rabbi Jurovich was the founding rabbi of Yavne, a community for Jewish renewal with whom UUFR shared its space for many years. Rabbi Jurovich was a leader here in Wake County for interfaith understanding and cooperation for many years. This morning, we give thanks for her life, and we hold in our hearts all of those who loved her and feel her absence the most. Aaron Johnson shares the sorrow that his friend Rachel is having mental health struggles, as well as the joy of starting new jobs on the 19th and on the 25th. Bev Manifold shares her gratitude for everyone for their good wishes and concerns and their offers of help for John. They thought that they were losing him a number of weeks ago, but he has rallied and he is doing well now. Bev and John, we hold you in our hearts. This morning, Marie Herring shares the joy of Yin or Yin Jaeger yoga, as well as the gratitude for her gratitude journal. Reverend James is guest preaching this morning at the First Unitarian Church in Wilmington, Delaware, and we wish him and Hiromi safe travels. And congratulations to our Congregational Life Coordinator, Annie Wayless, who is now Annie Simons. It was my pleasure to officiate Annie's wedding to Sheldon Simons last Saturday, and may they have many years of happiness and adventures together. Yeah. And speaking of weddings, Ethan and Allie Davis met and got married here at UUFR 24 years ago tomorrow, and we wish them a very happy wedding anniversary. On Thursday evening, the Cary Town Council voted to approve $1.3 million to help low-income residents displaced by new estate development. This happened because of the advocacy of One Wake, the community organizing coalition to which UUFR belongs. Many UUFR members were present to support One Wake efforts on Thursday night. May we hold in our hearts the 600 adults and children in Chatham Estates who are still likely to lose their longtime homes. But let us celebrate our ability as a community to work in partnership with others and make a positive difference in the lives of our most vulnerable neighbors. And finally, yes. And finally, congratulations to the NC State fans for their win last night, clinching their first ACC title in 37 years, and condolences to the UNC fans. As we hold all of these joys and sorrows in our hearts, and we reflect on the joys and sorrows and fears and hopes of our own lives, let's go ahead and be together now for a time of stillness and silence, opening ourselves up to that spirit within us and amidst us, called by many names but known to every human heart, that leads us to a deeper, richer, and fuller experience of life. And after the silence, we will sing hymn number 1009, Meditation on Breathing, but now let's be together in stillness and silence.
Everything we do at UUFR is only possible because of the generous financial support so many of us provide. We designate one Sunday each month as Justice Sunday. Today is our Justice Sunday, and this morning our offering will benefit the work of the Rural Advancement Foundation Institute, or RAFI. Rachel Brunner, of the Grassroots Engagement Manager of RAFI, is here to speak with us this morning. Welcome, Rachel.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. You all make my work possible and the work of my team possible at RAFI, and I'm glad to be here. RAFI is a nonprofit organization that challenges the root causes of unjust systems, supporting and advocating for economically, racially, and ecologically just farm communities. RAFI has supported farmers for over 30 years through many programs, including the Come to the Table program, which supports faith communities to build relationships with farmers and support just food systems through things like the Wake County CSA, of which your congregation is a member. We also support farmers in the United States, in Puerto Rico, and the US Virgin Islands through our Farmers of Color network to access federal programs and farm loans. And when farmers are denied services or loans from federal agencies, we work with them to ensure that they have access to the same resources that larger farms and corporate farms do. I'm a member of our policy team, and we incorporate what we learn from farmers through all of these direct service projects into federal policy. And I started at RAFI just at the beginning of this year and have been amazed to see the type of work that my team has done at the federal level. We are in the middle of trying to pass a farm bill that has been extended by our federal government into this next year. And my team has spent the last 2 years building relationships with senators and representatives who are now sponsoring 2 farm bill policies that we wrote to create a new just food system that could be included in our next farm bill. We have 2 programs within our policy team. One is the Challenging Corporate Power Project, where my teammate Erin wrote a bill that would require the government to buy less meat from large, giant corporations and more from independent farmers and ranchers. I personally am the manager of the Climate and Equity Policy Project, where we provide grants and programming to organizations that are led by people of color or serve farmers of color. This program builds their capacity to impact climate and agriculture policy from the grassroots level. And we have supported 24 organizations over the past year and a half across the United States who have been able to hire staff to have capacity to do policy work within their organization, host trainings about the Farm Bill with farmers and their community, as well as fly farmers to DC to learn just how easy it is to lobby and talk with their representatives and break down that barrier of the unknown of going to DC and doing that. I believe that people who are most impacted by an issue should be the ones that lead us toward the solutions of that issue. And with this approach, RAFI is working to balance the playing field between the big corporate agriculture system and small-scale farmers of color. If you'd like to be involved and stay up to date with what we're doing at RAFI, you can join our Policy Action Network. Our website is rafiusa.org. And we'd also love to come back and share more about our policy work and any other programs at RAFI with you all. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm glad you were with us today. If you would like to make a contribution this morning, we invite you to bring it forward and put it in one of our offering plates. If you prefer, please raise your hand and an usher will come to you to collect your contribution. You may also give using one of the methods on the screen. Our offering will now be given and gratefully received. Our reading this morning is a beautiful prayer by Rebecca A. Edmondson Lang with a bow to the work of Isaiah Barnwell and Stephanie Kaza. Spirit within us all, mysterious force giving shape to life, miraculous source and river of being, help us to know who we are, to see our place in the history of earth and in the family of things. Help us to see that we are a part of all that ever was, our grandmother's prayers and our grandfather's dreamings, our mother's courage and our father's hope. In our bones lie the calcium of antediluvian creatures, in our veins courses the water of seas. We are part of all that ever was, born of this earth, riders upon a cosmic ocean. We are not separate from nature. We are nature, part of that same spirit that turns scales into feathers, birdsong into speech. We live by the sun. We move by the stars. We eat from the earth. We drink from the rain. O great Spirit, help us know who we are and fill us with such love for this holy creation and gratitude for this awesome gift we call living, that we might claim our inheritance and live out our calling to bless the world and each other with our care. Amen.
To you, will you reach out to me with all of our voices and all of our visions? Friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Building bridges between our divisions.
Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Let's take a moment to give some thanks to our choir and all of our musicians today. In preparing for today's service about interdependence, I came across an interesting quote by Jeremy Lent. Lent is the founder of the Deep Transformation Network, which describes itself as a global community exploring pathways to an ecological civilization. On the topic of interdependence, Lent wrote, "Pervasive interconnectedness is fundamental to the sense of identity that non-Western traditions foster. When members of the Native American Blackfoot tribe meet each other, they don't ask, 'How are you?' Instead, they ask, 'How are the connections?' Similarly, in Central and Southern Africa, a guiding principle of life is Ubuntu, which is frequently translated as, 'I am because you are. You are because I am.' Ubuntu. You would think that as a minister with an educational background in religion, I would have first heard the word Ubuntu in church or perhaps in seminary, although it is as much a cultural and political term as it is a religious one. You might think that that's where I first heard it, but you would be wrong. I didn't first hear the word Ubuntu in a religious context, church or otherwise. Instead, for a long time, I thought Ubuntu was simply a Linux-based open source operating system used by people much cooler and nerdier than I am. I wasn't set straight until many years later when I came across a transcript of President Obama's 2013 eulogy for Nelson Mandela. Before then, while I had known that Ubuntu was not an English word and even had a vague sense that it might be an African concept, that was about as knowledgeable as I was on the topic, despite all of my education. But there in that eulogy, President Obama put the word Ubuntu into its cultural context for me, as well as traced the connection between the concept of Ubuntu and Nelson Mandela's anti-apartheid work. He said, "There is a word in South Africa, Ubuntu, a word that captures Mandela's greatest gift, his recognition that we are all bound together in ways that are invisible to the eye, that there is a oneness to humanity, that we achieve ourselves by sharing ourselves with others and caring for those around us." Now, Ubuntu is a concept that belongs to the people of South Africa, not to us, but it reminds me a little bit of one of our Unitarian Universalist principles. So currently, this principle is known to us as the seventh principle. It is part of those bylaws of the Unitarian Universalist Association that you heard about earlier, the association of congregations to which this congregation belongs. And with the other principles, it forms a covenant, a sacred promise made between our congregations about the values that we choose to affirm and promote in the world. The current language of the seventh principle may be familiar to some of you. It pledges us to affirm and promote respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Now, that part of the UUA bylaws, the part with the principles, is being revised. You heard a little bit about that during our welcome this morning. Although the principles have changed many times in the history of our faith, they kind of stagnated in recent years. The last substantial update was in 1985, and that makes the principles as old as I am. One of the changes being proposed is to the seventh principle. The new language that is being considered goes into more depth than the original language. That new language is, we honor the interdependent web of all existence. With reverence for the great web of life and with humility, we acknowledge our place in it. We covenant, promise, to protect Earth and all beings from exploitation. We will create and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect, mutuality and justice. We will work to repair harm and damaged relationships. So I'll write another confession. When I used to think about justice, the justice implications in particular of the principles, I tended to think that the seventh principle calls us primarily to the work only of environmental justice and not the work of social justice. You see, I used to think of the interdependent web as, say, the universe or the planet or the biosphere or an ecosystem. And even though both versions of the principle flat out state that we human beings are part of the interdependent web, I still used to think of it as something outside of human culture. I thought nature and culture were these separate things. And there are some cultural reasons why this is so. Here in the United States, we often place nature and culture into separate systems of binary opposites. When we are stressed out or we're overworked or just caught up in the fast pace of modern life, we often need to get away from society and get into nature. And I know that it's like that for me. And maybe it is like that for you as well. After all, there's a reason why during my sabbatical last year, I was so eager to go camping, even with a bad back, because we need nature. And maybe when you feel the need to get away into nature, you go for a walk or a hike, go canoeing or skiing or horseback riding. Whatever it is, you try to leave the cultural spaces of our hectic modern lives, get away and immerse yourself one way or another in nature. So there's an implication here that nature in its purest form is untouched by human cultures, or that human cultures are in some sense unnatural. We talk frequently about what is natural and what is man-made, as though human beings and the things that we produce are not part of the natural world, unlike beavers and bees or their dams and honey. Yes, we can produce some pretty nasty things with our technology, but the natural world is not all sweet apples and fragrant lilacs either. It has its venoms, poisons, and toxins. Yet these are seen as natural because they were not made by human beings, while household cleaners, plastics, and pollution are seen as unnatural. But in reality, human beings are just nature's biggest, most selfish producers, capable of the greatest destruction. And that has serious implications for those of us who still insist that social justice and environmental justice are separate things. If nature is culture, or at least is in culture, and culture is in nature, then the well-being of human beings is an environmental concern, and the well-being of the earth and its teeming life is a social justice concern. Our first principle, the original one, although there is similar language in the new version, refers to the inherent worth and dignity of every person. But what if we also affirmed and promoted the inherent worth and dignity of every plant, animal, and ecosystem, the inherent worth and dignity of our planet? Our principles, old and new, also call us to work for justice. The original language specified only justice in human relations, but the new values before us go even further. They call us to relate not only to other people, but also to other living beings and the planet itself with respect, mutuality, and justice. But what does that look like? It looks a bit like the way Desmond Tutu applied the principles of Ubuntu and anti-apartheid work to the problem of climate change. Desmond Tutu was a retired South African Anglican bishop, former anti-apartheid activist and social rights activist, and he passed away a little over 2 years ago. In an article titled Eco Ubuntu, he wrote, "Ubuntu arose from the African experience of habitation in this land. The African environment is uniquely challenging to survival. Humans don't survive as individuals. We survive as communities. Ubuntu acknowledges that we are not individual beings. We evolved as social beings. This is the literal meaning of the expression which defines Ubuntu. A person is a person through people." He goes on to say, "Ubuntu rose as small groups of people cooperated to survive in a challenging environment. But in this time, when technology and growing human numbers have changed the face of the earth, we're in the midst of the sixth great extinction event caused by humans, with other species disappearing 100,000 times faster than the natural extinction rate. We face crises of climate change, water availability, and pollution. This suggests a need for a change in our relation to the web of life. We are dependent on the ecosystems which support us. So to see these ecosystems as us, as an extension of our being, is pragmatic and accurate. If Ubuntu encourages us to cultivate and care for ourselves, for our families, and our brethren, so too should we care for our larger extended body, the bush, soil, air, water, and the wetlands." End quote. Again, Ubuntu is a South African concept. It is deeply rooted and inseparable from its land, its people, and its history. And many of us here do not share that history, despite undeniable similarities between things that happened there and things that happened in this country. But Desmond Tutu's argument really resonates with me whenever I think of our Unitarian Universalist value of interdependence. And I wonder if it maybe resonates with you as well. We want to create a better world, a more just and compassionate and sustainable world. A world with peace and liberty and justice for all. Community. We want a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. But if we really, really mean for all, then we have to get real about something. Our communities are never only human. Our homes, our workplaces, our churches, shops, doctors' offices, all of them are situated in ecosystems, however disrupted, that include local wildlife, however displaced. And we don't just affect the lives around us, they also have a profound impact on our own lives. For example, the quality of our food depends upon the health and the well-being of the living creatures that we must eat for our own survival. We are healthier, and the earth is healthier, when the plant and animal life we eat was raised in healthy ways. And the very air that we breathe, and pause for a moment and just breathe it in and feel its weight in your chest. This air was created by life on this earth. It was given to us by microorganisms in the sea and leafy plants. It was breathed by our ancestors, human and otherwise, as well as inhaled and exhaled by countless other beings we share this planet with now and in the past. And we are part of our planet Earth too, and of the great cosmos that holds everything. We are part of them, and so we are indebted to them. As we heard in the prayer by Rebecca Edmondson Ling that Karen shared earlier, we are not separate from nature. We are nature, part of that same spirit that turned scales into feathers and birdsong into speech. We live by the sun, we move by the stars, we eat from the earth, we drink from the rain. Human beings are, at our most fundamental level, relational beings, always tied to other life around us and the life that came before us, no matter how self-reliant or alone we may perceive ourselves to be. And that's why I always chuckle when I hear about the 19th century transcendentalist philosopher Henry David Thoreau's experiment in self-reliance at Walden Pond. His friend owned the land. Thoreau built a cabin there made of wood of trees that he did not grow, that had been fed by sunlight and rain and soil that he did not create. He lived off of the land using skills taught to him by others, skills developed over many eons by countless generations of people who had to figure out in community, through collective effort, one day at a time, how to survive. And he spent long hours writing, refining ideas that he was introduced to through the blessing of education, through the blessing of vast wealth of inherited human knowledge. So he was not as self-reliant as he thought, and neither are we. But if we accept our interdependence, and then we and all beings on this planet can benefit. In Cry of the Earth, Cry of the Poor, Leonardo Boff argues that a community that recognizes and promotes the full flourishing of all its members requires an extended and enriched democracy that is centered on life and regards all members of the community, humans, plants, and animals, as new citizens, sharing and participating in the great common life. Creating such a great common life requires us to enter more fully into relationship with those that we previously considered voiceless and powerless. But how can we best allow the needs of other than human life to guide our conscience and our actions? This requires us to develop a new ability, the ability to listen and to honor a wisdom that may seem alien to us. And in some ways, it is alien because it literally is not human. The task may seem impossible or even nonsensical at first. After all, other beings cannot speak to us the way human beings speak to one another. They can't tell us what they need or argue their cases with us in the same way that people can. But they have their own ways. And Leonardo Boff had some wisdom to share here too. He touched upon how we might discern what nature is communicating about its own identity, its own ways and needs, claiming that the entire universe and each being, as tiny as it may be, is filled with history. They can tell their story and deliver their message that speaks of the grandeur and majesty of creation. Other theorists working at the intersections between ecology and liberation theology argue that indigenous people all over the world learn through generations of direct observation of and relationship with the natural world, what is best for a given plant or animal species and for other life, human and non-human life that is in relationship with it. And this isn't so just in ancient times, but in modern indigenous communities as well. For example, there's a book I've been reading. I encourage you to read it as well. Give yourself that gift, called Braiding Sweetgrass: Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And she writes in it, scientists are interested in how the marriage of algae and fungus occurs, and so they've tried to identify factors that induce two species to live as one. But when researchers put the two together in the laboratory and provided them with ideal conditions for both algae and fungus, they gave each other the cold shoulder and proceeded to live separate lives in the same culture dish, like the most platonic of roommates. The scientists were puzzled and began to tinker with the habitat, altering one factor and then another, but still, no lichen. It was only when they severely curtailed the resources, when they created harsh and stressful conditions, that the two would turn toward each other and begin to cooperate. Only with severe need did the fungus curl around the algae. Only when the algae was stressed did it welcome the advances. When times are easy and there is plenty to go around, individual species can go it alone. But when conditions are harsh and life is tenuous, it takes a team sworn to reciprocity to keep life moving forward. In a world of scarcity, interconnection, and mutual aid become critical for survival. So say the lichens. There is so much that we can learn from nature, if we can learn to listen and open ourselves to the possibility of being in true community. So if you take one thing away with you today, take this. We live, as you are all very aware, in a world marked by extreme environmental devastation and near environmental collapse, as well as oppression and exclusion of billions of people, many who disproportionately suffer the worst impacts of environmental destruction. This is a time of great challenge for our planet, for all life on this planet, and for us. To face these challenges and to find a way forward in a rapidly changing environment, we need to find ways to come together. And not just come together as one species, but like the algae and the fungus, to come together with other life on this planet to form a new kind of mutually beneficial community. And to do so, we need a radical reevaluation, radical as in down to the roots, that's what that word radical means, of the meaning of community. We need a new understanding of peace, liberty, and justice for all. And we need new practices to help honor and uphold all life on this planet so that we can share together in the great common life. Amen. Blessed be, and may it be so. And now please rise as you were able for our closing hymn this morning. It's number 318, We Would Be One. Please be seated. It is time now to bring our time of worship to a close, but as we extinguish this chalice flame, its light will continue to burn in our hearts. As we go out to our daily lives, I leave you with the words of Margaret A. Kipe. As surely as we belong to the universe, we belong together. We join here to transcend the isolated self, to reconnect, to know ourselves to be at home here on earth, under the stars, linked with each other. Amen. Blessed be, and go in peace.
Was that helpful? Have a good afternoon. Thanks so much.